Nothing we say is investment advice. Please pause on all 3 pages of this disclaimer and read it.
All right, what's up? It's Cowboy. It is Wednesday. Today is the 29th. It is FOMC day. That's a big day. It's a big day for markets. And this is the first FOMC since Trump has been in. Excuse me, I dropped something here. And so ostensibly, he didn't have any kind of influence on prior FOMCs, but I doubt it because he pretty much, as soon as the election was over, was making changes around the world, whether you like those changes or not. And so now we're going to see what happens with a president in office, FOMC happening, right? Are they going to hike rates? Are they going to cut rates? Well, that's going to make a difference in price. And I have my arrow pointed right here on the chart. This is the BTC price, the Bitcoin chart, right? And that dotted line that you see there, that's the FOMC. And if you're watching my shows regularly, you'll know that I did not take any type of forecasts after Wednesday. I did that a few weeks ago, and it didn't go so well because there was a little bit of a surprise in the data that came out. I think it was FOMC or CPI last time that happened. So what I do is I forecast out to that, which we had a bit of a surprise open on Sunday with the whole DeepSeek thing, and so price came down, and it's right back up to pretty much what I said it would do. But I did have quite a few different ideas as to what would happen, but the main idea is what took place. I don't really trade based on these predictions. They're more of a way to know which way the wind is blowing, and you're not supposed to be trading on anything I do. You're supposed to do your own research and treat this as entertainment only or educational purposes, blah, blah, blah. So what now? Well, this is the 3-hour chart. So you got about 2 more candlesticks, right? Until the data comes out. And let's see what time that happens today. Give me 1 second. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, FOMC. So that's going to be at 2:30 p.m. is when the statement happens, right? So the actual federal funds rate's at 2 p.m. And it's like a 98% chance that they're just going to hold the rates where they are. And you would think that doesn't mean much to the market. But what it might mean is that the press conference is where you're going to get the type of information that might push markets around. So when the data comes out, sure, there might be some volatility in the charts at that time. But when Powell starts talking, he's going to be hawkish, dovish, or neutral. And many think that because of the new administration is here and what that administration wants and the pressure which the Trump administration can and does apply, we've definitely seen that. We might see Powell be a bit dovish, which has to do with cutting rates. So there's a lot of talk about all of that. There's a lot of talk about the landscape of interest rates, the landscape of money in the U.S., inflation, things like that. And the plan by the Trump administration is to go ahead and try to decrease costs of everything. And it's interesting that DeepSeek should happen so recently because DeepSeek is able to take, well, I think it took $1 trillion out of NVIDIA. So let's take a quick look at NVIDIA. We'll come back to Bitcoin and talk about what might happen to price there. But NVIDIA dumped from 149 all the way down to 116. $1 trillion came out of NVIDIA's market cap, which is remarkable. That's a lot of money. And so basically what ended up going down there is that DeepSeek supposedly is a lot cheaper to run. It supposedly uses lesser chips. It only costs supposedly $6 million to make, as opposed to the billions that OpenAI and everybody else spent. And so because of that, this concept, and by the way, they open sourced DeepSeek, so anybody can see the code. And the reason all this matters is that all the AI that we've been putting billions of dollars into, this $500 million investment into, or is it 500 billion? I think that Stargate wants to put into things. Well, now it's like maybe they don't need all that money. That's kind of what DeepSeek means. The fact that they can change the way that AI is accessing its info to use lesser chips and things like that means that, hey, do we really need to put all this money into things? And that can contribute to a deflationary event. What does that mean? Well, okay, think of it this way. The way that the economy works is that we take a bunch of money and we put it in places, right? And money itself is debt. Well, when you take a bunch of money and you put it in places, you get inflation. It's just how it works. You want to invest in server farms. You want to invest in new power plants. You want to invest in all the things that it takes to build this massive AI beast. That's a lot of money going a lot of places and a lot of people making that money. And unfortunately, it tends to mean that certain people are pocketing that money, and that's just the way things work, for better, for worse. Well, when that happens, you get inflation, usually. Well, in this case, when you're finding out that DeepSeek cost about 2/1000ths, 0.2% of what it costs to do OpenAI, that means that your cost basis or I should say your investment capital needed for these AI projects is going to be severely cut. And that means that less money needs to go into these things. And that means that less money may be floating around. And therefore, we might see a deflationary event. And we certainly saw one in NVIDIA. What happened in NVIDIA may happen elsewhere. But this is a very complex picture. So for now, we're just kind of considering that costs might go down, and we'll keep that as part of the inflation equation. The other part of the inflation equation may be that if Trump could get his way, there's going to be a lot more oil drilling. So if you drill for a bunch of oil and energy becomes a lot cheaper, then that's a primary input to all production. So items become cheaper. So again, when things become cheaper, you get deflation, and therefore a justification for a future cutting of rates can be made possible. And this is why we might see some dovish talk from Powell. That's among what could be many reasons we might see such dovish talk, but that's the equation that I have going on in my head. And I know this kind of talk is complex. So let's go ahead and talk a little bit about what might happen with the charts. Now, you'll get the, let me go to the half-hour chart so we can be a little bit more granular about what might happen, right? So we're sitting here waiting for a few hours, and then you get the FOMC where this dotted line is. And then just after that, I'm going to assume that markets are just going to remain relatively flat until then. And then just after that, for the next hour, or next half hour, Powell starts to talk. And when he does, you might see price peak up to about 103,000. Now, it all depends on how dovish he is. Now, if there is a surprise rate cut, and it would be a surprise, then that would mean that we would see prices probably rocket up to, like, say, 108. But if Powell is dovish and we have no idea, no way to know if he's going to be dovish or not, then I expect a pop up to 103 and maybe 108. Just depends on how he does, what he says. And it depends on way too many factors for me to really guess. And that's why I don't trade news. I just don't trade it. It's extremely unpredictable. If you do have a lot of really good software, you can try to, catch these news breaks. But I've never met anybody aside from people with really good software or an extremely high level of talent who know how to trade the news and be profitable. And even those people are just telling me they're profitable. I've not seen their work. So that said, I don't trade news. Let's go ahead and take a look at what might happen to Solana. And then we're going to jump over to the private live lab. V the Guerilla will be in today. I just texted with him. He's going to be doing the drips. So here's the thing about it. If you're watching this and you know who V the Guerilla is, he's my business partner in the Algo Factory venture. And V is connected at a high level when it comes to finance. And so he talks to a lot of people who are pretty high up. And so what he does is he gathers information and is able to share it. There's no legal reason he cannot share it with us. He's able to and not break any rules, but he shares it with Algo Factory first. And he's been giving us stuff for a couple of years now that is just way ahead of the rest of the news. This guy knows his stuff, and he is far more often right than he is not right. So looking at Solana, a little bit of a concern here. Let me take a brief look at the algos, and then we're going to jump over to the private live lab. There's a little bit of bearishness, but I'm also seeing algorithmic support on the daily. So price may not do what I'm about to show you. I'm going to give you two different possibilities as to what Solana may do. So possibility number one is that we see a breakdown of this head and shoulders. So we're going to go back down to the 30-minute chart. And there is a head and shoulders continuation pattern. Okay, this is a real thing. Head and shoulders does continue, right? So you have this left shoulder, head, right shoulder. And I'm not the biggest pattern trader, right? It's not my biggest thing, but head and shoulders just have a pretty high rate of success. That's one pattern I do not mind trading, as long as the algos agree to it. So let me remove this and do the actual head and shoulders. And we'll see if we can get some metrics. And it's a beautiful head and shoulders because the neckline is sloping upward. It leaves a lot more room for profit. So what might happen here? This head and shoulders is not complete. It needs to break below this neckline here, right? So if it does break, and if price heads down, and it may not, Solana's got a lot of support, but we're going to see what happens in the markets today. Today is unpredictable. You might see Solana head down to grab some liquidity down at 220 or even at 210, actually 212 really. So that could happen. It's possible. Doesn't mean it's going to happen. And if the FOMC is dovish, then you'll probably see Solana go ahead and head up on a dovish talk, pop up to maybe 250. If it's very dovish, maybe it'll go back up to like 260. But if you do get that non-dovish talk or some kind of surprise hike, then these are immediately where price should go. We'll see about it. But it wouldn't happen until after FOMC. So you'll probably get some sideways, very quiet market action until FOMC, and then that, if there is no dovishness or even some hawkishness. Good. Thanks for watching. We're going to move over to the private live lab. I want to invite you all to come over to algofactory.tech. What we do is we teach people how to extract money from the markets, right? Because this can be done on, if you have the kind of time, the kind of schedule, you can do this on a daily basis. If you have a full-time job, then you probably want to, consider doing it on more of a weekly or, like a swing trading basis. But whatever your schedule, you are able to come on in, extract money from these markets, do it in a systematic fashion that is predictable. And that's kind of what the key thing is. We help you develop with very basic data science how to do that. We're over at algofactory.tech, right? That's our website. Come check us out. And we love you all. And never, ever, ever forget. Where's my funny thing? Here it is. Never forget.
Join us or die.